This video is for education and entertainment purposes only. Please consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health plan.
Hey beautiful soul, it's Jacqueline from the Lost Labia Chronicles in partnership with Lichen Sclerosus Support Network. If you have lichen sclerosus and are looking to empower yourself with information, find acceptance, and reclaim your life, then please subscribe to our channel and keep on watching. And if you have a friend, family member, or loved one with lichen sclerosus and you want to learn more about the physical and mental health aspects of living with lichen sclerosus so that you can better support them in their journey, then keep on watching and please share this channel with them as well. So today's video is actually a continuation of the video that I did for LSSN a couple of weeks ago on the topic of laser therapy for lichen sclerosus, basically asking, is laser therapy a treatment? Is it effective? Should folks be doing it? What do we need to know? What does the science say, etc.? And I mentioned in that video that there's going to be a two-parter because the story with laser and LS is actually a lot more complex and nuanced than is often presented. What do I mean by that? Well, there's different types of lasers, ablative and non-ablative, and then under those there are different types of subtypes as well. So when people are like, oh, laser works or oh, laser doesn't, my immediate question is, what type of laser are you referring to? Because again, it's very complex. So for today, we're going to be looking at non-ablative types of laser. Last video did ablative, so if you missed that, click up there, check that one out first, and then come back here to see what the verdict is on non-ablative types of laser. As always, if you find the information in this video helpful, please give us a like, please subscribe, and if you found that this video was helpful and you want to support Lichen Sclerosus Support Network so that we can continue providing evidence-based education, you can make a donation, link below to do that. You can volunteer for the nonprofit, and another great way to help support us is to share the videos that we make, to share our content, let other folks know about us. That is always so greatly appreciated. And with that, let's jump into the video. What is non-ablative laser anyway? Great question. So laser essentially is going to be using energy to change and help the tissue regenerate. Now, so they got like this little beam of energy that's kind of going in and penetrating the vulvar skin. Now, the difference between ablative and non-ablative is, remember if you've watched that video that I did a couple weeks ago, the ablative versions do two things. First thing it does is it actually removes and destroys the top layer of your skin, which is known as the epidermis. So that gets removed. And then the second thing it does is it heats the middle sections, which is known as the dermis. It heats those. Now, non-ablative laser actually is not nearly as invasive. So it actually doesn't destroy that top layer of skin. It kind of leaves that layer of skin intact, and instead it's providing a lot of heat type energy. So it's heating the underlying tissues. So we've got like thousands of little columns. It's kind of getting the heat into that skin. And that allegedly, that kind of energy is what's doing the work to help the tissue regenerate and heal. What does non-ablative laser involve? So first of all, ideally you would have the conversation with your provider, your clinician first about potentially using it, and then assuming you say, yes, I want to go ahead, they'll book that appointment and hopefully they'll give you some instructions for the day of. They'll let you know anything you need to do to prepare. If they don't have a sheet like that, just ask them if there's anything you need to do for the day of your appointment to prepare for the session, right? So that might look like, they might say bring loose underwear. They may say, apply this cream beforehand. Who knows? But it's good to ask that in advance. Now, remember how I was saying that non-ablative laser isn't as invasive as the ablative types? And that's true. So there tends to be less pain experienced with folks that do the non-ablative variant because, again, we're not destroying that top layer of skin. But that said, there can absolutely still be some discomfort, pain, etc., primarily caused by that heating sensation. So like the ablative variant, your provider or your clinician, whoever is performing the laser procedure, will likely use a topical numbing agent before they start to use that little handheld beam on the vulvar skin. As I mentioned in the other video and in any videos where I discuss pain, pain is experienced differently in all different bodies. No one experience is valid or invalid. Well, actually, they're all valid is what I'm trying to say. No one experience is invalid, right? We all experience pain differently. Now, one question to maybe again ask ahead of time is, do you provide topical numbing agent prior to doing the laser? If they say no, we don't, ask if either A, they can, or B, if you can bring your own and use it. So just to provide an example, I live in Canada, and in Canada there's a numbing agent called EMLA, EMLA cream, and you can get that over the counter. I'm pretty sure you don't need a prescription. At least I haven't needed a prescription in the past, so maybe that's changed since the last time I got it. But it is a numbing cream, and so you can put some EMLA cream on before they do the laser if you know that you're particularly sensitive, or maybe if you're about to menstruate, right? When you're about to menstruate and you're in that kind of phase of your cycle, we are kind of hypersensitive to sensations, so that could be another thing to kind of potentially use, especially if you know that you're worried about discomfort. The aftercare for non-ablative lasers is going to be quite similar to ablative versions, even though one is slightly less invasive than the other. That's not a guarantee that it's not going to come with any pain or discomfort. So the advice is typically the same, and then you just kind of tailor that based on how your body reacts in these situations. So what I mean by that is that some folks do report some discomfort after getting non-ablative laser treatments. And again, that's usually best managed with a combination of acetaminophen, Tylenol, paracetamol, the variants in your country, and ibuprofen. Advil in my country might be something different from yours, and ice. Usually those kind of three to help with the pain and discomfort for a couple of days after is usually more than sufficient. Obviously, if there's a ton of pain and it's not subsiding with those kind of interventions, I would absolutely call in and have them give you an exam and see what could be going on. So in terms of pain, there's that. Again, you may be fine and feel that you don't need it, but I think it's better to know in advance and to kind of have these things on hand than to kind of scramble last minute when you're in pain, right? Like, that's not a situation we want to ideally find ourselves in. Day of the appointment and the next few days after, same with ablative. With non-ablative laser, you'll probably want to try to wear loose, comfortable clothing. So either going commando or wearing really loose, breathable cotton underwear for the first few days. And with respect to bottoms, whether that's pants, shorts, skirts, dresses, etc., just again, something breathable, something loose. We really don't want too much friction on that skin. Even though we didn't remove the top layer of skin with the non-ablative version, it can still be irritated, right? And when skin's irritated, we definitely don't want things rubbing and tugging up against it. So loose, breathable clothing. And then when you're leaving your appointment, can you bring yourself home? Do you need someone to bring you? Again, that's a personal decision. So you may be able to just drive yourself home or back to the office. You may be fine to take public transit. I'm like a cautionary person. So if I were to do this, what I would do, because I don't know what I'm expecting for the first time, at least for my first appointment, I probably arrange to have somebody bring me home or schedule an Uber just in case. And then I would kind of go from there. So if after my first session, I was like, oh, that was a walk in the park, like I could have totally taken public transit and then even walked home, then cool. For my next appointment, I won't schedule an Uber or I won't get a friend to come and get me. But if I'm actually in discomfort and I'm like, oh, thank God I had somebody here for me, then I'll probably make sure I have someone there for me or an Uber in subsequent sessions. Let's chat about cost and how often you have to go. So both of these, again, are based on a case-by-case basis, right? Everyone's going to be a little bit different. Cost is impacted by a number of things, such as where you live in the world, the clinic's pricing structure, whether or not you have insurance, and then if you do have insurance, whether it's going to cover some of that or not. I can't seem to find a price for YAG laser therapy in Canada. So if you have received YAG laser therapy in Canada and or in the United States, actually no, anywhere in the world, if you've done YAG laser, if you can, if you feel comfortable, if you would mind sharing in the comments what that price looked like for you, I think that would be really helpful to folks. I would assume that it's probably something similar to ablative laser, so probably something similar to, you know, anywhere from like 700 to 1,500-ish per treatment, per session. Again, can't really say, couldn't really find information. I know 2 people that did YAG laser in Ontario, I believe they said that they had it done. And for them, if you're an Ontario resident, you know what I'm about to say or what this means. But for them, their YAG laser was actually covered by OHIP. So OHIP is our kind of Medicare system. So we have a little OHIP card. We bring that in. It's covered by the government. So the 2 people that told me that was a few years back, but they did say they got the YAG laser and that OHIP completely covered their costs. So for them, it actually didn't cost any money. Those were both in hospitals. I just can't remember which hospitals they had said, and things always change. So again, please share your experiences if you have had YAG laser, regardless. Doesn't have to be in Ontario, but just like let us know how that went for you. And then in terms of frequency, again, it's going to depend on how severe your case is, how much your symptoms are bothering you, what clinical signs you're presenting with, and then how your body responds, right? Because everyone responds to medications and interventions at different rates. So steroids, for example, I know people that like start taking steroids and like a few days later or like a week later, they're like, wow, what a difference. I feel so much better. And then I know people that takes them a few months for them to start saying, I'm starting to feel better. I fell into that latter group. So it actually took me like 3 months for my steroids for me to start feeling like, okay, I think I'm starting to respond for this. 6 months for me to feel like that's a big difference. Essentially a year for me to get into remission and not have any symptoms whatsoever. So just to show that we're all, you know, we all really respond differently. And again, like anecdotally, some people tell me they had great results with laser. Other people tell me they had terrible results with laser. It made them worse. So again, really the clinician, if they're good, they're going to be tailoring the frequency based on how you're reacting. So if they do a session of YAG, they have you back in a few weeks and there's a massive improvement, then they might say, hey, we only need like 1 more. Or maybe there's just a mild improvement and they'll say, hey, we're still going to need like 4 to 6 sessions. So it's really going to depend on the individual at hand. Regardless of what type of laser you are using, with respect to frequency, you will need maintenance treatments. Usually that's once or twice a year. Again, if you watched our last video, I explained it in more depth there, but really briefly, at the time that I'm filming this, lichen sclerosus doesn't have a cure. And lichen sclerosus is progressive. So regardless of how you choose to treat, it is something that you're doing ongoing, kind of for life. Maintenance means that whatever you're doing, you can kind of do it less frequently, but you're still doing it, right? So very, very important to note that. Again, if your clinician is telling you that this will cure your LS, I would definitely ask them for proper medical articles showing that it has been proven to be a cure, because I haven't seen that. Every LS specialist that I've spoken to tells me they haven't seen that. So I think that if your doctor is saying that, I would definitely want to see those studies. All right, so the question I love to ask, what does the science say? Now, unfortunately, there's actually not a lot of scientific articles on non-ablative lasers in the context of lichen sclerosus. What I kept running into was a lot of like acne scarring, hypopigmentation on the face type stuff. I did find one randomized controlled trial, which I'm going to touch on in a minute, but I just wanted to flag that this is an area that, regardless of whether it's effective or not, it really needs, you know, kind of more research to really speak fully on it. So I just full disclosure. And secondary full disclosure is, of course, this is always my interpretation of the science. Feel free to always do your own research. And the laser that I'm going to be talking about, ooh, Lord have mercy. Okay, I'm going to read this off my paper once, and then I'm just going to put it down, and we're just going to call it the short version. I'm not one to usually struggle too much with words, but this is a mouthful that okay. So the laser in the study that we're about to chat about is called the Non-Ablative Neodymium Yttrium Aluminum Garnet Laser. Okay, now the paper's down. That's the last time you're going to hear me call it that. What I'm going to call it for short is the ND-YAG laser. This differs from the YAG laser, the ER YAG laser that I spoke about in the other video. That one was ablative. This one is a non-ablative YAG laser. Again, going to call it ND laser. Thank you for bearing with me. A study by Ogrink et al. Published in 2019 looked at 40 people with vulvar lichen sclerosus. I'm suppressing the urge to laugh because apparently every laser study involves 40 patients. I've never seen the numbers being so consistent. I don't know if that's like the magic number for a laser study, but anyways, I digress. So 40 people. This was a randomized controlled trial, so that's really good. That means they were broken up into two groups. So 40 people, 2020. One group gets the ND laser and the other group was just treating with steroids. Their measurement was kind of symptom reporting as well as biopsies that were taken before and after treatments. Really important that we get those good measures in there. And so what did they find? Well, actually they found that the ND YAG laser group performed better than the steroid alone group in terms of both symptoms. So their symptoms improved more in the YAG group, and they also found a better reduction in inflammation, which remember that was really important to consider something as a treatment, that clinicians are really looking for that decrease of inflammation in order to consider it a treatment. So they were seeing it here, which is great. And they also noted an improvement in sclerosis. Sclerosis, if you follow my Instagram page at the Lost Labia Chronicles, I do a lot of like definition work over there, and I definitely have a post explaining sclerosis, but sclerosis is kind of that stiffening, hardening, thickening of the tissue, right? It gets really hardened, and so they saw some improvement to that aspect of it. So it seemed like, tens across the board, right? Like the YAG laser group seemed to outperform the steroid group on everything. So then what's the verdict? Does this mean we actually found something that's better than steroids? Well, let's think about that for a second. On a first pass, this seems to look really, really promising for the YAG laser. But actually, there's quite a few issues with the study that make it such that at the end, I have to say the classic line of more research is needed and the results actually are not clear, and we can't really take too much away from this other than the need to definitely conduct more robust research in this area. So problem number one was that although this was a randomized controlled trial, there was no blinding of the patients or the clinicians or the dermopathologist. Remember, the dermatopathologist is essentially the pathologist who's someone that studies kind of body tissue and can tell what diseases are present. But the dermato part means that they have a specialization in dermatology in skin conditions. That's a really important piece to have with lichen sclerosus. So none of those people were blinded. What that means is that everybody knew who was doing what, right? If I was getting the YAG laser, I knew I was getting the YAG laser. The dermatopathologist who was analyzing the pre and post biopsies knew which group they belonged to. Patients knew, clinicians knew, the pathologist knew. Now, this is important because we ideally want everybody to be blinded so that we can filter out any kind of bias that leaks in and makes the scientific evidence less credible. So that's kind of problem number one. Problem number two is that actually the results are kind of muddied. And what I mean by that is it would have been nice, in my opinion, to have, the YAG laser group, the YAG laser group, just do laser. But actually, that group did both laser and steroids. Why that murkies the water a bit, at least for someone like me who's approaching this from a kind of critical thinking lens, is that now my question becomes, well, like, how much of this success was due to the laser compared to the steroids? Who was doing the heavy lifting? Was it 50-50? Again, so many questions that can be asked if we really sit and think about that. So it muddies up the results a bit. And I would have wanted that the results and the methods and protocols to be a lot cleaner, sharper, so that we could have more confidence in the results that we did have. And then the final issue that, big standout issue for me with the paper that kind of makes me at least be like, it's just kind of hard to say right now, is the fact that the clinicians and researchers running the study had a really, really hard time motivating the steroid group. They really couldn't get the steroid group to apply their medication consistently and properly, which meant that many folks in the steroid group were not applying it consistently or not applying it properly, which again can kind of muddy and skew the results. One might wonder if they were using it properly and consistently, would that have bumped up the results a bit? And the truth is we just don't know, because there's not a lot of studies looking at non-ablative ND YAG lasers and their efficacy and role in treatment and symptom management for lichen sclerosus. All right, verdict time. So, is the ND YAG laser as a non-ablative laser example, is this an effective treatment for lichen sclerosus? In my opinion, I don't think we have the research or the evidence to back up that claim right now. I don't think we have anything near the type of substantial and strong evidence to support the medical community's offering that as a treatment. I think that same as for the ablative types, it potentially does have its role as an adjunct therapy, as something that you add into your primary treatment plan. Your primary treatment plan ideally being a treatment plan that has a lot of credible, robust, strong science behind it in terms of safety, efficacy, and success rates. So again, could potentially be a helpful add-on, something to discuss with your doctor, something to explore, but again, being mindful that A, it's not a cure, and B, there's no evidence suggesting that it would be a good and effective primary or monotherapy for lichen sclerosus.